Hello everyone, it's Steve. Last week I did a no talking video, carved an elf. I thought this week I would do that same carving but in more of a tutorial style, show you how I do that, give you the steps and some pointers, and we'll go from there. So here's a couple of elves I finished up. I believe it was this one that was in that last video, and then I did this one the other day. I really like doing these funny guys with their great big ears, and thought I would show you how we're going to do that today. Okay, we'll start with this corner cut block of basswood. It's cut on the diagonal out of a 2" by 2" by 4" long block of wood, basswood. And if you enjoy carving faces on the corner and you don't want to have the mess of a bandsaw, or you don't have access to a bandsaw, or maybe you just don't want to mess with it, we now offer these on our website at hunterscreations.com, and I'll have a link in the comments below to that website. We'll be happy to slice these up for you and ship them out. So, and again, anything over $20 on our website is free shipping, so pretty good deal. All right, let's get started. So I know a lot of people always ask for dimensions on carvings, and I don't typically use a lot of dimensions. I just kind of go for it. But I will try to do that as we go, just to kind of give you some reference. Uh-oh, throwing them around. Okay. As always, start out with getting your safety gear on, your cut-resistant glove and your thumb guard. Make sure your knife is stropped and sharp. And the first thing we're going to do, step number 1, it's kind of a warm-up step, and it's just a good way to get started on something, is let's knock the sharp corners off of the carving, off of the wood here. All I'm doing is, and they're split. Just kind of be careful, don't get too aggressive when you're doing this. You don't want to grab it and split a huge chunk off of there, but we want to end up just with, I'd say it's maybe probably 3/16 of an inch. Yeah, about that we just cut off of all these corners. We don't need, I mean, this is such a thin edge, you don't really want any features out there anyway. They would most likely break off. And we can come down. Now, the whole reason for carving on a corner is so that the corner that's left there is a good way to get the shape of the face, so the nose kind of sticks out without doing a lot of work. But even with that, we don't need a real sharp, pointy nose. I mean, you can make one like that if you want, but we're not going to. So I just took that corner back, I suppose probably 1/4 inch, 5/16, something like that, just kind of flatten it out. I'm kind of partial to making these wide noses, so we need plenty there anyway. We don't have a pointy nose. Even if we do a little smaller nose like this one, that's still wide enough for the front. All right, for the next step, what I'm going to do is I just like to sketch out roughly where things are going to be. We'll start over here. We'll bring it down from the top just a little bit. I'm going to bring it down. We're going to bring it down and leave room for the ears on the side here. And we'll kind of arch this line across here. Okay, and then whenever you're doing a hat on a head, it's important to keep in mind that the hat should fit on the head. So you can imagine this being a hat that's kind of stretched here. If you look, the edge of his head kind of sits just inside of this rolled up part, but not so much that it looks like there's just kind of floating above his head. You want the hat to fit the head. That's important. Decide, like this guy here, he's got more a rounded face, rounded cheeks. And this one is maybe a little more angled down. So make that how you like. And then one thing I like to do is the eye line should be about in the center of the head. So if we imagine that this hat's fitting down over his head, we can probably say pretty confidently that the top of his head might be about right here. And the rest of this is just hat up on top. So roughly halfway between the top of his head and his chin is where the eyes are going to be. We're going to go half of the distance from there to the chin. We'll put his nose, bottom of his nose, I should say. And we'll want to make this nice and wide. This space between the bottom of his nose and the chin, we'll divide that up into thirds. The only thing left now is to sketch on some ears. And typically you want the ears to be like from the eye line to the bottom of the nose. But on these elves, they got a lot of ear. I'm not quite sure why, but I'm going to come up here, curve it up slightly. We're going to way up here and bring it back down and come down a little bit below his nose and curve it back up, something like that. Try to make it symmetrical. So the way I like to think of symmetry when you're doing faces and things like that is, you never really see perfect symmetry. So how I like to approach that is you try to do perfect symmetry. You'll fail, but then it'll look about right. So that's step 2. Make a sketch on your block of wood. Okay, now if you would like some dimensions here, we'll do that for you. Again, this was cut from a 2x2 block of wood. I already cut the corners off, and is 4 inches long. So that's what we're starting with. So the center of the block of wood usually ends up being about where the bottom of the hat is. So 2 inches, just right in the center of the 4-inch piece. That's where the bottom of his hat is, in the front here. And like I said, I sketched in this line up here just to help me visualize where I think the top of his head is. And then I guessed, let's see how close I was. So from the top of his head to his chin is about 1 3/4, or I'm sorry, 2 3/4 inches. So 1 3/8 would be half, which would be right here. Well, I did pretty good guessing. So the eye line is about halfway from where the top of the head to the chin. And then we split that in half. Again, 1.5 inches from there to the chin. So 3/4 of an inch. And that's, look at that. Wow, pretty good at this, huh? That 3/4 of an inch to the bottom of the nose. Okay. So there we have our rough sketch to start with. Now's the fun part. Let's start cutting him out of here. So just kind of a disclaimer, I'm going to be making some aggressive cuts on here, and I need to do that in order to keep the video moving along and not make it real long. But especially if you're starting out carving, I don't recommend doing that. It's a good way to have things go wrong. It's a good way to break stuff off you don't want to break. It can lead to slipping and cutting yourself. Just take it easy, make some nice slow cuts. There's no hurry here. Okay, but all right, let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is we have all this wood to remove on kind of the corners. So let's just go ahead and take that off. Just removing large chunks of wood for right now, kind of getting close to the shape. So I talk about this in my carving classes to try to help new people out, because one of the things I see people struggle with is they want to carve a specific thing. They want to carve an elf. They'll start with their block of wood and they'll start carving in the features, the details. And what you end up with when you do that is kind of a block of wood with some details cut in it. So what I always tell everybody and highly encourage is shapes before details. Think shapes. Okay, so here's an example that we took our block of wood and I got this rough shape going here. Okay, we're going to do the same thing on the bottom. Okay, now that we have the four corners kind of roughed in, we can take that a little bit further and start defining these ears a little bit. Now you got to be a little bit careful because it is getting thin out here on the edge, and you don't want to end up stabbing this knife, breaking through there and stabbing it into your hand. You position your fingers rather than right here directly behind it. Kind of hold it like this. So you got a little room, and then brace your thumb on here so you kind of have a controlled motion. So I'm angling in towards the head a little bit, and I'm not trying to go super deep. I'm just getting this defined for right now. And we just kind of cut along this outline here, angling away from the head up here on this side, and kind of stab in this little corner. Make triangle cuts there. And then just carefully start removing that wood. Now you want to make sure, one of the skills to need to pick up on is knowing where the tip of your knife is. So when you're doing a relief cut to a stop cut like this, you want to stay back away from that. Okay, so we'll do another pass here. We'll make this stop cut a little deeper. Again, not putting a lot of force on there. You don't want to break the corner of the piece off. And then just come in here. And if you stay away from that line, you won't cut into the ear. And we'll come on the back side and just eyeball that curve so we can relieve some on the back side. Now, again, be careful. We're getting thin here, and if you try to force your knife in there too far, the wedge shape of your knife will put too much pressure on there and just break the whole side off. So you don't want to do that. Little bits at a time. Trying to make a stop cut right at the top where the rolled up part of the hat comes around the head a little bit. I'll bring the hat down to that. It'll help us clean up here, breaking through. Then we'll repeat that process on the other side. Just kind of a tedious thing to work around these little corners. What you got to do. Just kind of. The other thing I like to tell people I'm working with is sneak up on it. You don't have to try to do it all at once. Sneak up on it, take your time. Now here, if you notice I made a stop cut here and here, and if we weren't real close to this edge where it's so easy to break off, I would just keep going deeper and deeper on these two cuts until they met in the middle. But if you do that, you're about guaranteed to break this ear off. So you have to kind of do, mark out where you want your final thing to be, and then sneak up on it, go back to each side, take out a little bit at a time. And just kind of keep in mind that your knife is pretty much a wedge, right? So when you're working on these areas that are prone to breaking, don't force that wedge in there too deep without making sure that one side or the other of that cut can relieve that pressure. That's why it looks like I'm hacking away at it here, not making real clean cuts. That's because I don't want that pressure of that knife being down in there. So I'm removing little pieces of wood so that when I come back in to cut where I need it to be, see how the wood comes off to the side there and it moves? If you don't have anywhere else for that movement to happen, it will force that whole ear and just break it right off. I can say that with absolute confidence because I've done it so many times. It's a thing. Okay, now the next step that I like to do, again, going back to shapes before details, we have our outline shape, right? But we don't have our profile shape. So before we get too involved in the details of the mouth and eyes and stuff like that, we need to define our profile shape. Now there's two main things when we're looking at the profile. We have to have our hat brim or edge, and we want the nose sticking out. So if we're looking at this one, everything's on the same plane right now. So that means we need to remove below the hat brim. It's not really a brim, it's just where the hat's rolled up. What do you call that? Anyway. Okay, so we need to allow this to stand out and allow the nose to stand out. So we got to remove wood above and below that. And at the same time, this whole length of wood is sticking out right now with where we want the nose to be. So that whole thing's got to come back. Now, just because I have this drawn out and I don't really want to lose it, I'm going to start cutting in for this edge of the hat, both the top and the bottom. Okay, just doing a simple stop cut, and we'll come back up to it with a relief cut. We'll just kind of repeat that process. Flip the piece around as needed. Okay, I want to go quite deep here. All right, let's see how we're doing on our profile. You can start to see we're pushing things back. We're going to have this stick out. Now this is still angular with a point, so that itself needs to come back. Let's take a chunk right out of the center. You don't want a triangular shaped point. You want something that looks like it fits his head. So curve that. Took the point off the middle and then just kind of blended it into the sides here. So I started a series of videos called How to Make Wood Carving Easier. It's kind of based off of a concept of a video I did a year or so ago, but the series is kind of focused on teaching techniques and stuff that just once you get those figured out, the overall process of carving wood is easier. So if you haven't checked that series out, go ahead and do so. Subscribe if you're not subscribed, and just hang out once in a while. We'll do some carving, figure some stuff out. We're just kind of sneaking up on it, right? We have our triangular point of our hat rounded. We have reestablished our brim, hat, whatever. And let's take a look at our profile now. I'm getting there, right? We got wood out here for the nose. This isn't shaped quite right, but we'll do that. But now let's bring this hat back, because we know we don't want the top of the hat sticking way out here in front. So just grab a chunk of that and break it off. Now as we do that, we want to start defining the ball up here. So we're angling away from the ball and just doing kind of a circular stop cut there, the V cut up to it. Okay, just starting to define that a little bit. Okay, now when we check our profile, it's looking pretty good. We still have, we haven't rounded the top of the hat. Let's do that next. And again, we can just kind of redraw this. Remember, we had from about the middle of the ball kind of coming up like this, and then we want that rounded over. Okay, so we need to cut into this a little more. Now here's one of those areas where it's easy to break it. Coming down here kind of into the grain. Just make some nice slicing cut. It's one of the nice things about this style of knife. It's kind of a Warncliffe style edge, where just round the straight cutting edge and a curved back. You can kind of use that curved back as a wedge, and you just kind of push it forward, and then the cutting edge cuts the wood away from the other side, which is good in these tighter areas. Okay, now let's narrow up the overall top of the hat here. Now, normally I push this one back quite a bit, but because I goofed and drilled my hole in the wrong spot, we want to take a little more off of the back here. We'll have it probably leaning a little bit more to the front on this guy. It's kind of rounded enough to get all the saw marks off the top. And then we need to kind of work on rounding the ball, making a little more defined into the hat. Just making this stop cut a little deeper here. I'll bring it around the back. To me, we're not overly concerned with the back of this. However, I find it anyway that if you carve a few of the details like the ears or a ball, it's just easier to get it to look right. I'm going to kind of undercut here. We kind of need to indicate that the top of the hat's being bent over by this ball. So there's going to be a fold right here. So we're just going to kind of come down right here and just make a V cut into there to start with. Pushing the point of my knife deeper towards the ball, kind of tucking that back in there. Something like that. And then we will continue to round this and undercut it a little bit. Okay, since we're sneaking up on all these details now, we're starting to get a little closer to detail stage. We pretty much have our shape narrowed down. We still got a little work to do on the profile. Like I said, we have this hat leaning forward because I drilled a hole there. But we need to start shaping our nose a little bit. So down here, the bottom of the nose, and I might cheat this up just a little bit because I rounded the chin. Just going to do a stop cut there, and then come back up to it. That right there is a good example of what cut resistant gloves can do for you. Things slip, and it cut into the glove. It was pretty violent looking and did scratch my finger, but you know what? It just scratched it. Wear your cut gloves. That's all I got to say about that. Okay. I should have been, what I was doing was trying to hold this kind of precariously in my hand. You got to be careful. Flip it around to where you have better control and do more of a slicing cut so you don't have as much force. It's just it's easy to kind of get complacent and just going after a certain feature or detail, and then you stuff like that happens. You lose control and people get hurt. That's why I don't carve without my glove on. Okay, so I started bringing in the area here for his mouth. Let's check out our profile. Looking pretty good. The nose isn't sloped right, so we need to bring some of that back, take some off of the bridge of the nose, down towards the forehead. I like to just start with kind of making a nice rounded area here. Okay, so that's looking better for the profile for our nose. Our chin is sticking out maybe a little bit too far yet, but we'll take that back a little bit maybe. Okay, the next thing we need to do is, so we have this angled block of wood, right? If we look at it here, you can see the angles of our corner block of wood coming up for the nose, which is what we want. That's why we started with that angled block of wood. But it's not, we don't want a flat angle from the tip of the nose back all the way out to the ear. So we need to kind of define the side of the head. And so again, match the hat to the head and the head to the hat. Well, it looks like we're going to probably say the edge of the hat, or the edge of the head is right here. Okay. Curve that down. Again, on this side needs to come in just a little more over here yet. And we'll just say the edge of the head is about right where we have this line anyway. Okay, so next thing I'm going to do is kind of, we want to push that little area back to kind of give more of a rounded front to the face. Just going to kind of make a stop cut down there and kind of slice up to it from the ear. That starts kind of pushing that ear back around the side of the head. Now, if we were super worried about anatomy here, these ears would really be back farther yet. But I mean, it is an elf, It's subtle, but you can see the difference of this side just going a straight line from the tip of the nose all the way out to the ear, to now here we kind of come out a ways and then it curves back to the ear. So the face is wrapping around. Okay, we have more work to do to clean up around the ears, but before we do that, let's start making some eye sockets here. So we're going to lay our knife. So if it was laying just on that angle block, it'd be about like this. We're going to stand it up just a little bit, but not straight in. And we're going to follow where we sketched out the edge of our nose. And we're going to pick a spot up here for the tip of our knife where we kind of want the deepest part of the eye to be. And that should be right in that line that's halfway between the top of the head and the chin, and typically somewhere close to the top edge of the ear as well. So lay your knife in like that, push it in, put a little extra pressure on the tip. And then before we do anything else, we're going to come over here to this side and kind of line things up and match that as best we can. Again, try for perfect symmetry and you will fail, and then it'll look about right. Okay, and now we're going to come from where our knife point ended up here. And come up here and just kind of make a rounded cut to the top of the eye. Put your knife in kind of deep right at where the corner of the eye would be, and just bring it over and back out a little bit to this edge. We'll do the same thing over here. Push it in kind of deep and going to come out to the edge. Okay, and then we're going to start here using this thing I talked about before where the back edge of your knife is kind of a wedge. Just kind of push that forward and let the back edge of your knife push it sideways, and it'll help slice that piece right out of there. Okay, just kind of get that cleaned out a little bit. I think it's almost time for me to get a new pair of gloves, or a new glove. This one was an oops a while back. Jabbed the knife blade into there. Couple close calls here, and the one you just saw a little bit ago right there. I've been using this glove for quite a while, and it held up really good. I mean, these holes you see are from where it did its job. I think it's about time to get enough holes in it now. I should probably get a new one. We have those on our website too. If we look at the nose, I like this angle, and this one's too straight, so I'm going to bring that in, make that adjustment here. Let's kind of repeat what we first did. Come up here. That looks better. This side over here is probably not quite as deep. I'm just trying to keep everything the same. Again, try for perfect symmetry, and you won't get it, but you'll get close, and then it'll look about right. The next thing I'm going to do is make a little upwards corner cut here around the nose. Now, when you're doing these cuts around the nose, you want to be careful not to go too deep, because then it's just cut lines you got to work out later. I'll just kind of smooth up some of these corners in the bottom of the nose. Okay, we're getting closer over here. Take a little clean up cut here on the front side of the ear. Get that point of the knife back up in there to clean up that corner. One thing I want to do here is I'm going to connect. Again, you don't have to put these details on the back if you don't want to. I kind of like doing a few of them, like the hat. Just bringing that down. Okay, if we take a little look here, which is always good to do, just pause a little bit and look. You can see I like how this eye is curved and this one just kind of comes out straight over. So let's curve that one up just a little bit more. Maybe like that. Just take your knife and just take your time to, again, try for that symmetry every step along the way. It kind of evens them out. Okay, now it's bringing the sides of the nose, the bridge of the nose a little bit. I'm going to start here, kind of right above the ball of the nose with the knife angling out and just make kind of a little scooping cut up to the bridge, or to the where the bridge of the nose meets the forehead. And then we'll clean that up from the top side and we'll bring the bridge of the nose back in a little bit more. This is a good example of what I like to call sneaking up on it. Little adjustments. The closer you get to having your carving finished, the smaller, thinner cuts you should be making so you don't overdo it. Okay, and then we'll get back to the back of the hat here. Cut it down enough that we get rid of our saw marks. And then we want to round this ball out here. Again, not super necessary, and you got to be a little careful. Again, remember your knife is a wedge. And if you push it in there too far, that ball will snap right off the hat. You know how I know that? I'm guessing you can guess how I know that. Okay, I think it's about time to, the next thing I want to do here is, in order to finish cleaning up around these ears, is I want to kind of eyeball where the bottom of that hat ridge brim thing is. Make a little mark there, and we'll do the same on this side so that it's carries around, and we'll just kind of connect those marks, and we'll bring that up from the bottom. Like I say, you don't have to put the details in the back, but on a situation like this where you're trying to clean out, make some negative space around the ears, I think this is helpful. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to kind of tuck these ears into the side of the head, pointing towards the head, and kind of keeping an eye on, we'll go this way first, away from the head towards the ear. Here where the edge of the head would be, want to make a little stop cut. And again, don't go too deep. You will break that ear off. And I curve that around as much as you can or want to. And the same thing here. And not putting so much pressure on there that you break the whole thing off. Just bring it back like that. I'll make these little V cuts in here. This is probably the most difficult part on this carving, is just cleaning up, getting that negative space between the ear and the hat right. It's kind of delicate and it's tight. And if you're just using a single 1.5-inch knife like this, it makes it a little challenging. A thinner detail knife would get in there probably a little easier. You can see the bottom of the ears are really thick. I'm going to take a chunk out of that so it kind of brings it forward. Doing a nice slicing cut. And there's room for the other side of this cut to push out, so there shouldn't be so much force on there to break that ear off, but you still want to be mindful of it. Okay. Want to round this edge of the hat a little bit more back here. Okay, let's keep this moving along here. Next thing I'm going to do is I want to carve some eyes in here. So we're going to do kind of a hooded eye where the top eyelid is tucked in kind of underneath in the corner, and then it starts to show a little bit on the outside, and then we'll carve kind of like this here. We'll bring this out, and then a little bit in the corner, maybe we'll show the eyelid. I'll come down. Something like that. I like to sketch them in there first. Again, shooting for symmetry. I'm going to take the point of our knife, and not super deep, but we're going to just kind of cut along that line. Make a stop cut. And the same thing for the bottom. Okay, then we're just going to come in and cut back up to those stop cuts we did. And what you want to kind of keep in mind is that you're trying to create a ball inside of here. So we're just knocking the corners off. And you want to make it look like the front of a round ball. Take that ridge off the middle and just kind of round that off. Get it as smooth as you can. The smoother you can make the face of your eye, the easier they are to paint if you're going to paint them. At an angle to our stop cut, nice and slow and easy. Again, learning where the tip of that knife is so you don't undercut it too much. Having a nice sharp knife is important for eyes. If your knife isn't sharp, take the time to pause and get it sharp. Sometimes when you do this, you'll need to kind of go back and feather out the outside, like up here in this corner. We'll take a little bit more off of there, tuck that back in. And I usually do that along the bottom eyelid too. Just kind of cut that, try to blend that in to the cheek a little bit more. This top one, come down and you kind of undercut that. Tuck the bottom eyelid up in there. And we want to get rid of this ridge. Okay, that's looking pretty good. A little more out of this corner here. And then we need to put a bottom eyelid on here. And this is, you want to go just a little ways underneath the eye and not very deep. And just be careful. If you get too close to the edge of where you were before, it'll just break off. We're just making a subtle little line in here. I'm going to give him the bottom eyelid. Just as carefully and slowly as you need to put that in there. And we can put a little bit of an indication up here for the top eyelid that starts coming out. Most of it is kind of tucked up underneath the skin here from his forehead. Okay, that looks good. Okay, I'll take a little bit out of here and put just a little bit of a curl cut to define the eyebrows. I've in the past have even just painted eyebrows on and they don't look too bad. Helps if you give it a little bit of a ridge. Kind of depends on the look you're going for. Okay, the next detail we want to put in, let's go ahead and put some definition into our ears. I'm going to curve in just a little bit out here, just so it's not a straight line coming down. Just a little bit, kind of subtle. And then what we're going to do is take our knife tip, and this is another one of those situations where you don't want to go very deep. I'm just going to come in from the edge of the ear a little bit, angle it in towards the ear, and then just kind of trace around the profile, not going all the way down. And then we'll just kind of bring it around, hook it up towards the head, and we'll just kind of jab our knife down in there. And we'll do the same thing over here. Start right where you stop, or start at the same point you did before. Angle it towards the ear, kind of follow that shape down, and just jab it in there. And I kind of want to make a deeper hole right where it goes into his head here. And we'll come around and make a V cut back to those stop cuts. Being careful because we don't have a lot of wood to mess with here, and we don't want to undercut it. We just want nice clean lines here. Something like that. And then you can kind of play around with different how you want to shape the inside part of this ear differently. Maybe we'll just kind of put an extra little divot out here just to give it some interesting stuff. Kind of like the way that looks. And I'll bring this up a little more here. I take a little bit more off the back of the ear, clean up the saw marks, and then want to push it in, tuck it in a little bit more there too on the back. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is just kind of round off the edge of the hat. Rolled up part of the hat so it looks a little more rolled up. Kind of rounding the edges over. Okay, the next thing we need to do on this guy is we need to give him a mouth. Clean up a little bit here. Okay, so we want to kind of create a mound where the mouth is going to be. So remember we divided the area between the bottom of the nose and the chin into thirds. We'll kind of remark that. How about there? Something like that. It's pretty close. Okay. So then we're going to go this first line here. That's going to be where the opening or the split in his lips are. There's a couple different ways that I like to do this. Sometimes I'll bring the smile lines down from beside the nose, just like that. And then what that helps do is kind of tuck in or start to round this area for the mouth a little bit more. And you can see you can vary those lines, different angles and lengths, going to give you a different look on the face. Let's go ahead and do that first. So we're going to keep our knife angled, the nose or the point of the knife angled in towards the nose, and just going to a little deeper at first here, and then just kind of as we come down get lighter with the pressure. Do that same thing over here. Okay, and then we'll come back. To start at the top, we'll need to undercut the nose a little bit on both sides. Like that. And then we'll stick our knife point up in there and just kind of come around, follow that down. Kind of split on me a little bit there. And if you have to do it again and clean it up, then I like to come back and smooth this line a little bit around it, and maybe towards the bottom just kind of blend it in. Okay, we kind of have that now with this straight line drawn across here and these smile lines brought way down. He kind of looks like he's grumpy. Sometimes it's little things like that that happen along the way that will kind of change my mind about what I'm making. Maybe I'll make this a grumpy elf. So the next thing I like to do is over near the smile lines, if we're going to give this guy a smile, kind of cut in these little divots. Pretty sure that's the technical term. Nope, it's not. Okay, and we're gonna go. So this is the where his lips come together here. If we want to give him a smile, we want to come up a little bit from that and off to the sides. And I'm just gonna make kind of a start with just kind of a plunge cut. This spot right here wants to split on me, so I gotta be a little careful. And just try to clean that up. Like that. That's the first step of it. We'll match that on the other side. Again, just above this line and over towards the edge. Now, there are many ways to do things like this. This is how I'm doing it lately. And the nice part about this is if you only have a knife, this method works for you. Or if you're like me and you have a bunch of other tools too, sometimes you just like using the knife. Try to clean that up a little bit. Okay. So that pulls it in. Now, it doesn't look real nice yet, but we'll get there. This may be a little too harsh over here. Okay. All right. Now the next thing we're going to do, I'm going to take the tip of my knife and just kind of make a stop cut straight in, connecting these two areas. Now, it's at this point you can decide how exaggerated or how big of a smile you want to make. Um, Also, if you want to have his mouth open or not. Typically, I don't think the upper lip curls maybe as much as the bottom one, like if the mouth is open. So we're just going to come in here, the center of this, and it's going to make a stop cut. I'm just kind of drawing a line with my knife, really, right up into the center of the other one. And he already looks happier, doesn't he? And then just going to come in on it, follow that line, and make a little angled relief cut across there. Kind of starts to shape the top lip. And just take your time. When you're getting down to details like this, you just want to take your time, go slow. As we've gone through all the work to shape our carving, now that we're working on the details, we want to take our time and get it right. Okay, now that we've kind of defined where the smile is going to be, that's looking pretty good. What I like to do is kind of further round and smooth these outside corners on the top. Okay, now what we need to do, we can make some real shallow scooping cuts above the top lip just to kind of give that top lip a little more definition. And you gotta be real careful you don't go too deep and grab a chunk of wood you don't want. Just kind of a subtle thing here. Not removing much wood at all. Okay, now do a check on our profile here. Pretty happy with that until we get down to this point. And that's because we aren't done defining the bottom lip yet. So let's draw this in here. So we want to come up, the lips meet up here in the corners. Then typically, especially when you're smiling, it pulls a little tighter in the corners and then it gets a little fatter down here in the middle. So we're going to make a little stop cut along that line, angling away from the lip and not going very deep. Again, we're at the detail level here. We don't need to remove a bunch of wood. We're just making some little changes. Okay, and then we're going to come up to the bottom of that. Being careful not to go too far and get the lip. I like to start, just make one pass here, kind of removing some wood directly below there so we can start to have the lip stand out. But we will do some other things with it here as well. Okay, I'm just kind of removing some wood between the lips and the chin. Okay, now what we need to do is get a little bit more refined with our shapes here. We want to round over the top edge of the bottom lip. Kind of paying attention to where they come together on the sides here. Want that cleaned up, defined well. We're going to work our way around this side, rounding that bottom lip. And again, we want to make sure we have a nice clean line here where they meet. And this top lip on this side is still sticking out too far. Bring that in. Kind of redo our, there we go. Okay, and then you can just kind of fidget and fuss with this forever if you want to, just making tiny little adjustments like that. A little more separation in his lips, maybe even a little bit of a opening right in the center. So I think we're done with his face. No, we're not. We got to pick his nose yet. You ever pick an elf's nose? It's kind of fun. Okay, let's just, we're going to stick with the knife only thing. If you weren't and you had some small gouges, using a number 11 or 9 little gouge can help with this. We're just going to use our knife carefully. We're going to start up here, not going super deep, just kind of marking it out. Just going to make a cut down there. Kind of curved, and we're not going in very deep, and push it down like that. It's making a little an upside down U or V. And again, remember what I was saying earlier about your knife being a wedge. You can't push your knife in too far on something like this, because the wedge, there's no place for the wood to go. It will just crack and break, and you'll lose your end of your nose. So then I kind of start, once I define the outside shape, then I carefully break it up into little bits, and I make sure to put my knife in and rock it down so it's kind of going back up in there. And then come along right along his top lip and slide in so that you're cutting right at that level to cut out the bottom, to do the other side of that cut. Just very carefully, not using a lot of pressure, not trying to do it all at once. We are literally just picking his nose. Okay. All right. The only other thing we haven't done is you could have this be a bald elf. I mean, nothing wrong with that. But a lot of times I'll put hair coming out from their hat and just bring it around the back of the head. So let's do that. I'll draw it in here. Sometimes I don't draw it in here, but it's going to have it up here somewhere. It's going to start coming out of his hat and wrap around the side here in front of his ear just a little bit. We'll stop this one up at the top of his ear. And it looks to me like this side of the hat is down lower. So maybe we'll come over here. Something like this. And we'll come around here. just somewhere back here. Again, the back side of this is up to you how detailed you get it. I like to put them on there. Okay, so then we'll just take our knife, do a quick stop cut. Doesn't have to be very deep at all. We're just making a little edge here that we can call hair. And we'll come back up to that. And we need to kind of sneak a relief cut in right here by the ear. Okay, we'll clean this up a little bit here. You got to be careful when you do this. Sometimes you can create kind of an unnatural cut into the face, so you want to blend that back. Okay, we'll do the same thing over here. Okay. And then that's pretty much it for the carving part. We do want to go give this guy a good scrubbing. You mark on them with pencils, and you over time your gloves get dirty and the oils from your hands, they can start looking kind of dingy. And I found that it's really helps clean things up, make the painting process a little nicer. If you just take a little bit of soap in a container and a good stiff scrub brush, and you scrub it for a little while, and it really comes out nice. The other thing with this carving, like I mentioned before, I've got a hole up here because I drilled it in the wrong end, and I've got a hole down here, and that's just for my recording purposes. And typically on this, I'd like to maybe narrow this up, or kind of cut in behind the chin here a little bit. Just to, so it isn't kind of a straight back from the bottom of the chin. Doesn't look quite right to me. You can just kind of come from the back and round this over, or you can do a little bit like this, come in from the front and the back. You kind of end up with a double chin looking there. We need to remove that. I'm trying to save a little bit here so I can use make this last shot here on the video work out. But well, like I said, I just wanted to kind of do more of a tutorial over showing the details of carving the elf that I did in the no talking video before. Hope you enjoy this. If you do, take a second, hit a like on the video, subscribe if you haven't subscribed, grab your knife and go carve something.